The Marching Roundtable's appearance at Carolina Crown Spring Training was made possible by Fred J. Miller Incorporated, found at fjminc.com.
Of course I am. Like Christmas. Like Christmas.
Like Yuletide season.
Yes. It is, exactly.
All right. I love that. Okay.
It's Scottish people born at Christmas time.
Really? Is that where it comes from?
Yes.
I love that.
But it really comes from, if you want to see the story, Sweden. Jule. Juill.
All right.
And if you think of the history of Scotland, it's probably Swedish Vikings.
So you can say you're related to Vikings somehow?
Oh,
that's kind of cool to say.
Yeah, well,
I don't think I have any Vikings going on.
Scotland was pillaged and plundered by the Vikings, and some stayed.
Wow, and that's where the Yuille came from.
Jewel to Yuille, yeah.
Yuille, John Yuille. Okay, so this is Tim. I'm talking with John Yuille. This is so interesting. I'm sorry. I'm loving this. So you're here from FJM, Fred J. Miller.
Correct.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to Fred J. Miller they sponsored my trip here today so that I could be here.
Oh,
so
cool.
They're wonderful. And I was excited that
They sponsored my trip.
They did sponsor your trip. Well, I thought it was great that you were going to be here and I could talk to you. So tell me, what's your role at FJM?
Well, I've worked with Michael Cesario for over 35 years. I am
and live to tell
and alive and everything.
Michael, of course.
I have been the pattern maker for a great many of most of his drum corps, marching band, and color guard designs.
Okay, I have like 1,000 questions already because that is so interesting to me. But first, let's talk about we're here at Crown Spring Training,
Correct.
2019. It's June 4th or 5th. I can't remember what day it is. And what are you doing here?
Well, I'm here to fit the color guard, and I'm also here to look on the fittings for the corps uniforms for all the corps members.
Okay, so I was really surprised that I didn't know that there was this level of personalized service. Like, I'm really impressed by this. Like, you guys are here making sure the costumes fit each member individually. That's really impressive to me. So why do it at that level?
Because part of the reason is the level of competition which Crown competes at. We do it for all of our sponsor corps, which are the Blue Devils, Carolina Crown, Phantom Regiment, Cavaliers, and this year our new sponsor, the Crossman Drum and Bugle Corps.
Wow, wonderful! Those are some big names there going on. So you were just doing the same thing with the Cavaliers this weekend,
this
right?
past weekend,
and then now you're here with Crown.
Yes, exactly. On Saturday, we fit the entire corps and the entire color guard, individual fittings. Yeah.
In one day?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people helped. There were 6 or 7 assistants.
Okay, because I was going to say, where's your cape, your superhero cape? Right? And you're sort of making sure that works and that everything's working as supposed to.
And the kid is in the right size and the kid feels comfortable. And one thing that they can always, they feel comfortable and they feel they can get a full breath in the uniform. And then there's simple things like marking the hems and marking the sleeve links and those kind of things.
Okay, I hadn't even thought about the breathing thing, but that makes perfect sense, especially in the way things are fitted to the body now and more tight fitting, whatever. You have to make sure they can do what they need to do.
Yeah, and a lot of, more and more we're incorporating stretch fabrics, which makes that, like, for example, to use the Cavaliers as an example, the front of their uniform is non-stretch. But the back of their uniform is a total 4-way stretch Lycra.
Interesting.
So it looks kind of neat and clean on the front, but the back gives the rib cage.
And that's where they get mobility and breathability.
Full mobility, and they feel like they're... I guess what I'm trying to say is you never want the kid to feel that his rib cage is constricted.
Right.
Particularly under the situation where he's running and it's in heat. And he wants to be able to feel that whatever full breath he needs, he or she can get.
Okay, so this is really interesting because we're in this new world of design and fabrics and movability. That's not the right word, but
flexibility.
You're a pattern maker. So at what point in the process was that, for example, we'll take that as an example. At what point in the process was that discussed? Like, Michael gives you this look. And then at what point does somebody go, well, some of this needs to move, this needs to breathe, is it on the back? Like, how did that part of the process work?
My background is dancewear construction. So at the very beginning when I was working with Michael, I was also making unitards, leotards, tutus, male dance tunics. So I have always been aware of dancewear construction techniques that the ballet, that modern dance uses to allow for a full range of motion.
Man, you're like the perfect guy for this job.
Kind of. Yeah.
I mean, really.
Kind of.
That's amazing, because that would be the exact expertise that we all need right now.
So when Michael first brought the designs, I said, well, I think their arms should be able to get comfortably up to here. And so I incorporated stretch wear devices that allow for that right away.
Give me an example of a stretch wear device that allows me to be able to move my arm up to here.
There's a thing called, at the underarm, a gusset.
Okay.
And it's a patterned in addition of fabric to the bottom of the sleeve.
Okay.
Which, rather than this feeling like a tight movement, it becomes a loose movement.
Okay. So as not anyone that knows that much about pattern making or fabric, that's really interesting. So you're bringing all those years of expertise
and dancewear and incorporation of stretch against non-stretch, and sometimes fully 100% stretch garment.
How do you? Now I may be going into the weeds and I shouldn't, but like, how do you know what can be stretch and what cannot be, and how it's going to move and stuff like that? I know you have that expertise. Can you explain that at all?
A lot of that is a give and take, a discussion between Michael and I. What he's looking for, like he may think this should look rigid, this should look strong and straight and lean. And I said, okay, so we can do a constructed front, but maybe we can match it with a stretch back or stretch sleeves.
So you have a discussion with him about what should it look like, how should it move, perhaps?
And also what textiles he might be thinking of. Maybe he's, in his mind, he's already committed to some textile that he really wants to use. So then we work around that.
Well, that's a lot to know. It's good that
well,
you know.
It's been 35 years.
No, I know. I mean, I think it's always exciting for me to meet someone who's an expert in their area, and you're bringing all this breadth of knowledge with you. But of course, that's the way FJM always does stuff. But like, I love that because I mean, you'd have to have somebody that knows what they're doing to make all those choices.
Well, the other thing we've done also, I think, is we've brought I would say, a leaner, more athletic silhouette to a uniform that previously you have not seen.
Right.
I think our basic fit is a little tighter, a little closer to the body. And part of that is possible because we're also incorporating dancewear techniques into the construction of the garment.
Okay, so since you brought that up, how do you... one of my concerns is, I see what FJM does, and I think it looks good on everybody. It's appropriate for every kid. But I do see... I guess I'm going to say this. I do see sometimes people put young, like high school kids, in things that are too body conscious for me to feel comfortable that they're in it. So how do you, I'm sure you guys have those discussions. Is that about the pattern, or is that about the fabrics, or like what?
Sometimes, well, the first thing that's important is that everybody gets an opportunity to perform, regardless of the body shape.
Of course.
So sometimes a lot of that may be director driven rather than designer driven. Like the director of the group has decided, I really want a unitard look. Do you see?
And I can tell you that's not director driven. That's visual guard guy driven, probably. But somebody made the choice.
And then maybe it's not how the designer doesn't think it's appropriate. And I'm sure there were discussions that happened between the designer and the guard director. But, finally, for whatever reason, the decision's made. And that's where I come into the process.
Okay.
It's been decided.
This is what they're going to have on. Okay.
This is what they're going to have on. And then my job is to do it as well as I can over a size range.
Okay, so you get these ridiculously creative things from Michael Cesario, and you have to interpret them.
Right.
So
that
strikes me as Really? How do you do that? Like, go ahead.
I'm obviously I'm comfortable with patterning the entire human body. And I've worked with Michael for 35 years, so I kind of have a sense of his proportionality, where he thinks the waistline is, where bust line, hip lines, all parts of the body fall into place. And then I've been doing it so long that I know this generally works well. And I will go to that. I also, just in terms of the process, the first thing that happens after a customer approves the sketch is we make a sample uniform.
Right. And that so you're starting your patterning work there.
I do the pattern for the sample uniform.
Okay.
And Michael will spec the colors and the fabrics and the trims and the notions on the sample uniform. And then we'll develop that sample uniform. And before it even gets to the customer, there'll be a dialogue between him and I about that uniform. The lines the proportions may be a little off. He may feel something needs to be wider or narrower, and also that a fabric may be inappropriate, and we may change some color and some print things. And a lot of times we hit it the first time, but there are the uniforms where, we don't think it's right yet to send to the customer. And then we might do a second sample.
Okay. And
then when he particularly feels it's appropriate and correct and he likes it, it goes to the customer. And then there's another dialogue. What does the customer think of it?
Right. How do they feel about the way you've interpreted the drawing?
Right. And how does it work for their group, their performing group, their kids? A lot of times it's just great, and then it might proceed to order. But there might be another sample after that.
Okay.
There can be at that point. Or there might be a sample that just corrects small details. We're a great believer. It's better to show it to you. If you're going to order 300, see it rather than imagine it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Right. You don't want to make a mistake 300 times.
Yeah,
I thought it was going to be this blue, and it's that blue.
Right. So you always make a sample that's exactly like...
I'm a big believer in the visual contract. Does it look like the sample you saw?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So... Is this really satisfying work for you?
Oh, I love it.
I would think it would really be like to see a group, see something on a group that you've patterned and helped bring it alive.
It's a real kick to go to DCI or BOA and realize a lot of those groups are wearing stuff that I've patterned, and the other thing is that Michael and I have a very special relationship in that. We've been working together 35 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, the success of it has been simply that I have no desire to design and he has no desire to pattern.
That's the perfect marriage there then. Right.
Exactly. It's like, I appreciate the fact that his sketches are beautiful, etc., but I don't want to do that. And I think he feels the same way.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. When did you decide you loved this and this is what you wanted to do and you became good at it? I don't want to get off too much in the weeds, but I'm interested how patterning became your passion because you're obviously so good at it.
Well, looking back, I recognize that, in college, I worked in a costume shop. I started out working in costume shops. And I don't mean to sound arrogant, but it always kind of made sense to me.
I would think that it would somehow that clicks with your brain. That makes sense to me. Yeah,
it made sense to me. And when people showed me things, I go, and I could extrapolate from that and figure out other things. And I could watch people, and I taught myself to drape and the other thing that I think, looking back on it now, is I realize I have a very strong relationship with math. And when you get to this level of it, you're working with math and numbers and XY coordinates to grade patterns. And that, to me, has never been a problem.
I love that you just said that because that makes perfect sense to me that someone who's going to be figuring out deconstruct something, how to construct something with a pattern. It's so mathematical.
Well, what happens, the rest of the process, like when the customer approves the sample, all we have at that point is the size 38 regular male. But we need to satisfy a full size range.
Well, that would be math too then.
And the way it's done nowadays is that pattern is placed on, in a CAD system, is placed on an XY coordinate, and all major points of the pattern have an XY function, positive or negative, to the next size. So that point moves so much X, so much Y.
Okay.
And that becomes the corner of the 40.
Okay. I never thought of patterning as being so mathematical before, but it makes perfect sense.
I mean, that's and then the other thing that has to happen is we not only have to establish the full male range, but we also have to realize the female version of it and the full female range. And then at FJM, we offer extra short, long, and extra long versions of the coats for different height people.
So all of that becomes more math to make all
That's
those...
more functions, math functions on the pattern piece, yes.
Well, I was never good at math, so now I know why I'm not a pattern maker.
I was very good at math and fought it, and now I realize, I get it.
Really, but what's interesting is that I love it. Like, this is the same thing with drill writers. They're often mathematicians, but the idea that you take the math and like put the art to it. Yeah. It's such a romantic idea that I just love. You know, like it's real cool. Mathematicians will tell you it's very artistic. But I don't think the general people think of it that way at all. But here's an example of math being very artistic.
And also that math will solve your problems. That there's a solution. There's a solution in the math.
I believe it. I mean, I you know, it's interesting you say that because, like, when you say that, if you said that about science, I get that immediately. But the math, I think I'm one of those people that has a love-hate relationship with math. Like, I kind of struggled, you know. So, but that makes perfect sense, though. It's a way to solve a problem and figure something out, and you love doing that.
Yeah, and now that I've been doing it so long, it's just it's kind of automatic now. It feels really. Every once in a while, you come up with a new problem, and that's great. But it feels very natural.
You know how to do it. Like, yes, it's just you've done it so much. You have so much expertise that you can look at something and you're like, I know exactly how I'm going to do it.
And I love it is the other thing. And it honestly doesn't feel like work. You know.
Well, let me stop and say that as someone who has loved all the work that FJM has done for so many kids, I want to say thank you on behalf of all of them for making them all look so good and for being the guy that figured that out. I'm excited to get to meet you.
Well, my personal background is I did high school band way back when.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. I'm gonna. Were you a woodwind or a brass?
Woodwind.
I was thinking clarinet.
Clarinet.
Oh, I'm so good at that. I can't believe I did this on video. I can usually guess. I had you pegged as a clarinet player.
Yeah, and it was a very positive experience that I look back fondly even now. And I am, not to be too corny, I'm just happy to be participating in making other kids have a good experience.
Yeah, absolutely. You're sharing that with them in this new way. Okay, so this may not be a question you can answer, or you're not prepared for this. He doesn't know I'm going to ask this, but has there been a patterning project that was the all-time hardest one, or your favorite one? Like, can you ever name a project where it was like, oh, this was super complicated, but I loved doing it, or that one took me the longest? It's not even a fair question to ask you.
Uniform wise, like from
That's what I'm thinking.
I mean, this may
not be fair to put you on the spot like this. I'm just asking this out of the blue, but I just wondered if there was something that you remembered, like, man, that was so hard to do, or so intricate, or so fun.
You know, there's a couple things. The thing that came to mind immediately, and maybe it's because we're here at Crown, was the stagecoach year when the guard uniforms for the females. That
Very intricate, right?
That was fun, and it was also interesting because we were loosely pulling details and ideas from late 19th century clothing. So
that sounds interesting.
That was a lot of fun, and making them work, and I thought the graphics, the graphic work by Scott Winters at FJM was particularly
that was beautiful. Yeah,
and Michael, I thought Michael's design was so there was a lot of good work coming together there, and it felt good, and it was different.
It's interesting you mentioned that one, because I was talking to the uniform volunteer ladies out here who call themselves Crown Couture,
yes.
which I love. But they referenced that. They said, "Oh, that year those guard uniforms and that, like, they talked about how many, like, there were a lot of pieces or accessories or something."
And it was fully accessorized. Michael had one of his design assistants come out here, a woman named Michelle Sampson, and she actually fully accessorized the guard as well. So it was necklaces, it was headgear, it was everything.
Wow. They were beautiful.
They were beautiful.
They were so beautiful. But see, people watching, there's a lot of work and time and sweat and blood and expertise that goes into all this. The reason I love talking to someone like you, John, is that people don't think about
I don't think
how
they realize
did it arrive? Like what
exactly
what,
how it
all
got
that
there.
Stuff. Yeah.
How it got there. I think everyone is aware of the fact that there's a sketch.
Yeah, but right.
But I don't think they
don't think about your
and
parts.
then there's a garment, but how it got there.
And that there's some really smart guy sitting around that knows how to construct that and pattern that and make that, like, that's. I love bringing that to light. I'm excited. I'm getting to meet you.
It's kind of a back room view of the industry. Yeah.
It is, and I think it's really interesting. Okay, so now I'd like to ask you a couple questions about this year's Crown uniform.
Sure.
But that's going to be on a separate video because I can't release that part until after the season starts.
Hear the rest of this conversation after the 2019 season premiere. Find all videos from the 2019 DCI season at marchingartseducation.com. Find other interviews and videos from top DCI designers, instructors, and marchers, behind-the-scenes videos, interviews, and podcasts from winter camps, spring training, traveling during the season, and performances, all at marchingartseducation.com/DCI-2019. The Marching Roundtable is proud to be an official media partner of Drum Corps International.